Hey everyone! In today's video I want to talk about Rebecca. I actually have two copies of Rebecca. This one is a paperback that I think I got through Paperback Swap. This one is the first edition that I owned, which I got at a used bookstore that I had credit at for volunteering. And this one is an edition from 1938, the year that it was published. And the publisher of this edition is actually the Literary Guild of America, which when I looked that up online, I found was and is a competitor to Book of the Month Club, which existed before the Literary Guild of America existed, which I had no idea. I thought Book of the Month was a new thing. Nope. And I ordered this one because I wanted a readable copy of it. Not that the vintage one isn't readable, but I just wanted one that I could be a little bit more rough with. And I had just really wanted to read Rebecca lately. Like, this whole year it's just kind of been calling out to me, and I decided it was time in October. And it is definitely a very good book to read in the fall when it's almost Halloween and things outside are looking a little bare and foggy. One of the things earlier in the year that kind of caught my attention relating to Rebecca was the fact that I saw a biography about her that had just come out on my birthday, actually, by Tatiana de Rosnay, called Manderley Forever, and I just really wanted to read it, even though I hadn't read anything by Daphne Du Maurier yet. But I did look up the author online to see what I could find out about her, and it turns out she died the day after I was born. So I thought that was really interesting, especially when combined with the fact that her biography was published on my birthday this year, and that she had also written a biography of Branwell Bronte, the brother of two of my favorite authors, Charlotte and Emily Bronte. So when it came time to actually read the book in October, I actually kind of wanted to read the vintage edition, so I put up a poll on my Instagram stories, and the end result was, I think, in favor of this paperback edition, but for the majority of the poll, it was split down the middle 50-50. I started the book before the poll ended, and I decided on reading the vintage edition from 1938. And I kind of liked that I picked this edition because it meant that I couldn't highlight or underline things in the text as I went, no matter how much I actually wanted to, because I did want to. So it kind of just forced me to focus on the reading experience and what was going on inside my head rather than what was going on the paper, I guess, if that makes sense. And I also felt this need to just really prepare for the moment of beginning the book. So I got on my cozy PJs and I made some cocoa and curled up on my couch under my blankets and just got mentally ready to start the book. And I wouldn't recommend doing this with every book you read because it might just hype it up a little bit too much and be a letdown, but this one wasn't a letdown. I was already familiar with the first sentence of the book, and that is, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again," which is a beautiful and amazing first sentence. And I was worried that the rest of the chapter wouldn't live up to that first sentence, and it definitely did. The whole first chapter of the book is maybe my favorite first chapter in all of literature, just as chapters go, because it's so beautiful and creepy and atmospheric, and I loved it. And then I worried that the rest of the book wouldn't live up to the first chapter, but it definitely did. If you can't tell already, I absolutely loved this book. It is one of my new favorite books of all time, and I'm sure I will reread it in the future. I just really loved the writing throughout the whole book. It was just absolutely beautiful and well crafted, and the story itself was well told and constructed, and I just loved that the creepiness of the book just slowly starts to seep in to the narrative, and then by the end it's just like full on creepy, kind of frightening stuff going on. I really liked the protagonist because she is just kind of an average female woman as far as white women in Britain in the early 1900s. And I felt like I was reading about Downton Abbey, but as experienced through the eyes of someone like me who is totally unused to that kind of society and that kind of etiquette and routine and general lifestyle. So it's a very accessible novel for someone who doesn't know what life is like there. And I also related to the protagonist because of how her mind works and how she imagines people or things to be other than what they are based on things that she has heard about them, and she imagines conversations between her and other people that may or may not actually happen in the future. And I do that all the time and it drives me crazy. And then because of that, the protagonist ends up being a bit of an unreliable narrator, which I really enjoy in books because you don't know who to trust and what's actually going on, and then it just slowly starts to unfold the truth. As far as Maximilian de Winter, I don't really know what I think about his character other than the fact that he's just so mysterious and probably not the kind of guy that I would go for, but I just think it's really interesting how we're so in the mind of the main character, and because she doesn't really know what's going on in the mind of her husband Maxim, we don't really either. One of my most favorite things about this book is the house. I really love old houses, whether they're abandoned or still kept up, and here in town there are a couple of old mansions that are at least 100 years old by a well-known architect of the time, and I've actually had the chance to explore both of them, but actually stay the night in one of them several times, and it's just such an amazing, beautiful place, and there's this sense of the past and the history of the family it was built for, and some people claim that it's haunted, so there is a kind of spooky aspect, and there's the aspects of wings of the house that you're not really supposed to explore or that you don't go to very often, and when you do, there's just this very similar kind of atmosphere as there is in parts of Manderley in Rebecca. And one of the things that made me feel like this book was calling out to me maybe a week or two before I actually started reading it was a dream I had where I went to this big old house that I swear I had been to before, because I have more memories of this house than occurred in my dream. And when I woke up the next day and slowly started to wake up more and more, I realized, no, I have never been to this house, and maybe I saw pictures of it on Tumblr, maybe it's a real abandoned house, or maybe I just have dreamed about it before and created it in my dreams and went back to it. So it was kind of eerie for me, knowing what I did about Rebecca before I actually started reading it. And some of my favorite scenes in the book were of the main character exploring the house for the first time and wandering around the beautiful grounds and just all the descriptions of the plants outside. And Du Maurier describes the plants in a lot of human kind of characteristics, like the tendrils were clawing out and the way that they were twisting around each other in an embrace and things like that. I just really enjoyed how she portrayed the house and the grounds. The only thing that I didn't really like about the book was mostly, I think, due to the language being outdated, and that is the character of Ben and how he is described. And essentially he seems like he has a mental disability of some sort, and the word that Daphne Du Maurier uses to describe him is just very outdated and not a proper way to describe someone who has a mental disability. But beyond that, because I did love the book so much, I ended up giving it a full 5-star rating because I just did absolutely love it, and I'm just going to overlook the outdated language and appreciate that character to his full complexity. I have since watched the Alfred Hitchcock adaptation of Rebecca, and it was enjoyable. There were things about the movie that were very old Hollywood kind of things that stand out a lot more compared to what movies are like nowadays, which is kind of just like the different shots they use, and especially the dialogue and how the actors act and how they speak and the accents they use. The way they speak just kind of sounded really old-fashioned and not quite like the British accent that I'm used to, but the DVD did have lots of bonus stuff that I enjoyed watching. And I did also watch the commentary on the movie, at least most of it, and I would say it's not really necessary to watch the commentary if you've watched all the other bonus stuff, because the guy just repeats things you've already learned and then makes some pretty obvious comments about what's happening in the movie and complains about what the characters are doing and why he doesn't like them. So it's not really very beneficial or interesting, and I stopped watching it before we got to the trial because I was bored and wanted to do something else. So I definitely want to read more by Daphne Du Maurier, as well as that biography that I saw earlier this year. Rebecca is the first book in like maybe ever that has made me want to underline and highlight different passages, and I really haven't done that outside of needing to for school. And I did go back and underline the first few chapters just with lines that I really like and things that stood out to me. And I underlined the very first line of the book, which I realized at some point was iambic in rhythm, and maybe that's why part of why it's such a good sentence. So at some point I do want to go through the rest of the book and reread it and underline and just analyze it, because I just loved it so much that I want to do that. I know not everyone liked Daphne Du Maurier's other books as much as they did Rebecca, so if you have read her books, including Rebecca, let me know what you thought of them and what you thought of their movie adaptations if you want. That is pretty much everything I have to say about Rebecca, and I actually have somewhere to go to right now, so I will sign off for now. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.